Hello and welcome back to the Rory Talks Football channel, your daily Arsenal news updates, debates and my opinions, where today we have Chelsea versus Arsenal, the preview, team news, predictions, how I think the game is going to go. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. We're on the way to 6,000 subscribers. Smash a like on the video if you enjoy it as well. And we will start with injury news. Mikel Arteta press conference today. And look, it's one of those ones with Mikel Arteta where he doesn't give much away. We know he doesn't, so you have to take everything he says with a pinch of salt. But he spoke about Saka, Saliba, they're the big two. Trossard as well, of course, who went off injured in the Manchester City game. And here's what he had to say. So, on all three of them, he said their doubts, coupled with the fact we've had 14 players away with their nations over the past 10 days, means that while Mikel has an idea of the 11 players he wants to field at Stamford Bridge, he isn't ruling anyone in or anyone out at this stage. And it is believed that everyone is going to train today. More specifically on William Saliba, on the toe injury that Saliba's got, and he's been dealing with this for weeks, by the way. He's been having painkillers and stuff to get through games. Hopefully, it won't disrupt his season. Obviously, he's been carrying it for weeks now, and we had to use that time to settle, and we believe that it was the best moment to do it. Is he a doubt for Chelsea? It depends how he's able to train today. He then spoke about Bukayo Saka. He said he's been working so hard to be fit for the game, so let's see where he's at today, again in training today. He had a couple of days that he needed to rest as well, but the rest has not been a rest for him because he needed to do the treatment and train to be ready for Chelsea. So at the start of the international break, had a couple of days off, which I think is very, very good for him. Definitely needs that little bit of rest, but then he's been working to get back fit, and again, he'll train today. And my feeling is that they're going to be fit to play. That's my feeling. And again, my feeling is we've got Sheffield United next weekend. You know, maybe they can have another break then, especially Saliba if he's just managing that toe injury. But we'll see. We'll see. I do think that with Trossard, it's not as important. I think now that Martinelli's back, I don't think Trossard starts anyway. I think Saliba is the most important in terms of how I think we deal with and without Saliba. But we'll see what happens tomorrow. He was also asked about Bukayo Saka's minutes, and that's been something that we've all spoken about. And he said what he has said in the past. If you want to be a top player, you have to play every 3 days, and you have to play 65 to 70 games a season. We have to play him when we see him in the right condition mentally and physically. He needs to be performing as well. And that is the truth. You know, you look at the players at the very top, they do play every game. Ronaldo and Messi didn't used to take breaks in Champions League games or anything like that. It doesn't happen. Are there cons to that, potentially, long term? Absolutely. But Arteta has always been clear that he expects that of his players, so fair play to him. So this, if those players are fit and available to play, which we can't rule them out, is potentially our best and strongest starting 11 all available to play. Now, David Raya in goal, you can take Aaron Ramsdale, of course. I'm putting Raya there more because I think he'll be there. Ben White at right back. He's got a new, fresh trim, by the way. Bleach blonde. Well, almost white. Quite literally, Ben White. Saliba, Gabriel Zinchenko, of course. And, you know, when I say our strongest 11, some people will argue that Jury and Timber should be in that back line if it's our strongest 11. And to be fair, I actually think people got a bit carried away with that. I don't think we've seen enough of Jury and Timber to outright say that our best back four includes him. Don't get me wrong, he absolutely has the potential to be there, but I don't think we saw enough of him before he got injured to say that. Absolutely. Then the midfield three that we've not seen yet. We've not seen start a game in the Premier League yet. Partey, Rice and Ødegaard. I am desperate to see that. I think it unlocks Ødegaard having Partey and Declan Rice in the midfield. I think Partey offers something that's, you know, I think it was underestimated what we lost when Partey's injured. And not just when he's injured, but when he's not at his best. But when he's at his best, his ability to switch us from passive possession into a dangerous attack like that, like he did with that ball over to Tomiyasu, I think we've missed that massively. And then that front three that we've also not seen yet of Saka, Jesus and Martinelli. It would be such a boost if we can get that 11 out on the pitch and starting a game for the first time this season. You know, we've not seen that midfield or that attack start a game yet. So would be huge, would be massive for us. If Saka is unable to start, I think you bring in Kai Havertz. I think you play Kai Havertz at 9, move Jesus out to the right. I think that can work really well, and I still think that is more than capable of beating Chelsea. In terms of the midfield, would you put Havertz in the midfield? Not for me. For this game, I think, Chelsea have a decent midfield, assuming it's Enzo, Caicedo and Gallagher. Gallagher will put himself around, and I sometimes feel like Havertz is a bit too, not lazy on the ball, but I feel like Gallagher would get at him in a way that he won't be able to get at Declan Rice, and I think having Havertz further up is actually more beneficial anyway. Obviously, he wouldn't start in that ideal 11, but he could start at 9 with Jesus off the right. Chelsea's form. You can look at it for yourself. Now, this, by the way, I love this graphic. This is from SofaScore. You could download SofaScore in the description if you want to. But it's the results combined with how difficult the fixture is based on odds. So, for example, Chelsea against Liverpool, it was a draw, so it's in grey, but it was a positive result in the sense that they weren't expected to get a draw. Whereas the draw against Bournemouth, also in grey, but it's below the line because they would have been expected to win that based on odds. So I like that. I think it's a really interesting graphic to read. And look, you can look at it, and Chelsea in the league have 3 wins, 3 losses, and 2 draws. And that is poor. The narrative that started being spun is, they've got the 3rd highest expected points in the league. So based on XG, for and against and a bunch of other things, their expected points is 3rd in the league, which, fine. I look at that set of fixtures and you kind of feel like they should be up in the top 6 just based on the ease of those fixtures. They've played Luton, they've played Forest, they've played Bournemouth, they've played Fulham, they've played Burnley. They should be right up there, and they're not. And fine, they've created lots of chances that they've not scored, but they've not brought anyone in that's suddenly going to start scoring those chances. And Nkunku isn't back. And so in that sense, there is a big sense of optimism around Chelsea fans that I don't quite understand. I do think they could get something out of the game for different reasons, but when I look at that form, and you look at the last 3 games, all right, they beat Brighton, who were in a bit of a rut, and it was in the League Cup. And then they've beaten Fulham, who I know we didn't beat, but we should have beat. And Fulham were awful in that game. And then they've beaten Burnley, who have had a shocking start to the season. So their form isn't as good going into the game as I think people have made out. And certainly, if you look at this, Arsenal's form is substantially better. The 2 games that we have drawn were bad results in terms of we were expected to win those games. The loss, of course, at Lens was very bad, but then we bounced back from that with a win against City. One thing that's interesting, by the way, is that the win against Brentford was considered less likely and therefore a better result than the win against Man United. In fact, the Palace win was seen as more impressive than the win against Man United. So, very interesting. But you look at that form, and we definitely carried the better form going into the game. We've won 6, drawn 2 in the league. Clearly better form. And we've done that. I know Chelsea have done it with injuries, but we've done that without our best front 3, without our best midfield 3. And if we've got them back this weekend, people have complained about us not looking as fluid. Well, give us a chance to field our best 11 and maybe we'll start looking a bit more fluid anyway. So going into the game, I am expecting an Arsenal win. I think we have to, if we're talking about going for the title again, off the back of a win against City, we have to go into this game expecting to win it. We've not lost at Stamford Bridge in 5 years. And anything other than a win, in my opinion, is a bad result. It is a bad result. And, this is a big chance for Arsenal to... we got the win against City. We've put ourselves 2 points ahead of them. This is where you then have to build on that. If we go and drop points now and City beat Brighton, that win almost gets scratched off. And we can't allow that to happen. So it's a massive game. Really important that we win. In terms of, like I said, where I think possibly we could drop points is not just Mykhailo Mudryk, but Mykhailo Mudryk is the best example of how we could get done on the break. And the one thing we saw against Man City was that we showed a lot of respect to Man City. We allowed them to have possession. We didn't play a really high line. We sat off a bit. And that nullified the likes of, I know he didn't start, but Doku when he came on. And I feel like if we really go for it against Chelsea and we don't take them seriously and we don't pay them enough respect and we play a really high line at the bridge, we could get caught on the counter. That is my only fear. is that Chelsea have got a good defensive record. They've been very resolute in most of their games. They could sit in, frustrate us, and it could get to the 60th, 70th minute at 0-0. Go for it because we're there believing we should win that game, which is fine. But we go for it and we end up getting caught on the counter. That's my only fear going into the game. That's the only way that I think, I'm not expecting Chelsea to come out and play us off the park. I'm not expecting Chelsea to come out and dominate the ball. I'm not expecting them to press us high and force us into mistakes. I don't think that's going to happen. But this could potentially be a way that we throw away the game. And that would be throwing away the game. On our side, where I think we win the game, it's this midfield. If this midfield plays, I think it's so balanced. I know we've not seen much of it so far, but I think it's so balanced. I think Thomas Partey coming back in at the 6 is massive. I think Declan Rice in the 8, against Conor Gallagher, I actually think is both of them could do the dirty work. Both of them put themselves across the field. Declan Rice has some of the best running stats in the league, as does Conor Gallagher. And what it also does is it frees up Martin Odegaard to be more creative, to do less of that grunt work, but also to push up. And, Martin Odegaard's had more presses, more successful presses than any other player in the league this season. And I actually think having Rice and Partey there frees him up to do that even more because he doesn't have to be as conscious about the defensive duties. So even though Chelsea have spent £250,000 on that midfield, I think this is where we win the game. Of course, we win it in the attack as well if we have that front three back. But I think if we win the game and we're doing a review afterwards, I think we look back at this and we go, yeah, that midfield is unbelievable. And I hope that we get to see it. I'd be surprised if we don't. I would be surprised if we don't. But I hope we do see it. And as a score prediction, I'm going to go 1-0 to Arsenal. Now, we've not conceded away from home so far this season. We beat Palace 1-0, beat Everton 1-0, and I can see it happening again. I can see Chelsea sitting in deep. And some people have said, look, if Chelsea can sit in and, force Arsenal even into a 1-0 scrappy win from a set-piece goal or something. I've seen Chelsea fans and other fans saying, that would be a good result for Chelsea. That would show that they're close to, coming back. And I don't think it is, because if they do get that sort of result, and this is something to talk about afterwards if it happens, but if they do get that sort of result, that just means that they're Crystal Palace. That just means that they're Everton. That just means they're a team that at home can sit in and defend. And if we ultimately win the game anyway, I don't think that would be the progression that some of them think it is. But there we go. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What would be your starting 11? What's your score prediction? Are you worried? Very interested to know. I'll be back tomorrow after the game with a review. I'll be live probably only on TikTok for the game for a watch along. But until then, have a fantastic evening. Celebrate the fact that Premier League football is back this weekend. And come on, you Gunners.